Rotarians, welcome to the meeting of the Rotary Club of West Jackson. Zoom attendees, please mute yourself and submit any questions that you have via the chat function on Zoom, or unmute yourself and let us hear from you. Today, our invocation will be given by Jimmy Kelly, followed by Dan Griffin, who's going to lead us in the pledge.
Please bow your heads. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for all our many blessings. Thank you for the fine group of men and women that make up this club and do so many charitable events for our wonderful city. Thank you for having Sheriff/Mayor Glover among us today. And thank you for all the efforts he has put into making the city even greater. Let us remember service above self. Bless us through the nourishment of our body. In Christ we ask. Amen. Amen. Fellow Rotarians, please join me in the pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Dan. Fellow Rotarians, before we get started today, it is a pleasure to announce that Scott Henry, past president, is here with us. If we could get Scott. Excellent to see you, sir. And I'd like to thank greeter Mike O'Brien. A few pop-ups before we get started. We announced this last week, but of course, the next 2 weeks, we will not be here for lunch meetings at Timaquana. Next Wednesday, the 28th, we will have a social right here from 5:30 to 7:30. Like I said, there will be no lunch meeting. Sign up for that on DAC-TV, or how I think most of us do, through just letting Patty know that you're going to make it. Also, it appears that Tuesday, March 5th, we're going to be attending a social at the Jacksonville Children's Forest Building. That's located at 62 North Main Street, and it runs the same time as a normal social. So that's going to be between 5:30 and 7:30. Now, I think I undersold this maybe a little bit last week. I want everybody to know that this is going to be a nice event. It's going to be catered by the Scotties. There's going to be good food, good wine, and most importantly, good programming. It's going to be a really great show. I hope that you guys are going to be able to make it. So once again, either let Patty know that you're going to be able to go, or sign up for it on DAC-TV. That being said, if I could have our Sergeant at Arms join us up here, I think, or Lee Davis, either one, or both. We're going to go ahead and try to give away some money with this raffle we've got going on. So it was, what?
1 for 5, 3 for 10, or 10 for 20. We have over 2,000 on top, and we still have the queen. I heard about that.
Yeah, so she was out showing the queen to everybody. We're trying to draw the Queen of Hearts. I wanted to make sure that we did that so that all the tinfoil hats could go away. The card is indeed in the deck.
Have they been reshuffled?
I've shuffled it about 20 times.
Good, okay, perfect.
So we're ready to go now?
I think we're ready.
Who wants to draw?
How about we have Sheriff Butler?
Oh, yes, there you go.
Sheriff Butler, will you do a raffle for us?
Sheriff Glover's going to draw one of the tickets here.
Okay. 068 5258.
5258.
Anybody?
Okay, Vince Paul. All right.
Oh,
Hold on, folks.
that's good.
So, Chloe, that would have been fitting, Vince, because you've been so kind to help sponsor our Alhambra fundraiser. It would be just pretty much like an exchange of money. But anyway, very close, very close. The Queen of Hearts remains, so we will draw when we're back here in 2 weeks. Just very quick, the board's going to meet at 1:30 this afternoon following our program today. For those of you who would like to make up a missed meeting or something of that nature, that is always a very good way to do it. Or of course, if you want to keep up to date with anything going on in the group, as far as the club administration is concerned, there's no better way to do it than by making the board meeting, which starts at 1:30. I'd like to bring up Rob Frazier, who has this week's Family of Rotary report.
Okay, Family of Rotary. First order of business, birthdays. On Monday, the 19th, Tom Watson and Mike Carlton Sr. had birthdays. Happy birthday to them. Lee Davis and Johnny McClure share a birthday today. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
And I was caught off guard about us not having a physical meeting next week. I did study up on the birthdays for the month. The only one I can remember that's coming later is Preston Kyle's end of the month. There's someone else, forgive me, can't remember who it was. But anyway, I have no real news. Any news items from the floor? Good news, hopefully. Family news. Jimmy Overton.
Yeah.
You're here today. You're
Yeah,
here.
right here.
Yes, of course. The second shout out. Well, I think that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I'd like to call up our Sergeant at Arms, William Mooney, who will introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians. Thank you, President Dean. Good afternoon, Rotarians, and a special welcome again to Sheriff Nat Glover. So good to see you. Welcome back. We don't have any visiting Rotarians today, but Dan Griffin, will you please introduce your guest today? Welcome, Danny. Well, the other day, my son comes home and says, "Dad, you're probably going to be getting a note from school." I said, "Oh no, what happened now, Tyler?" And he said, "Well, I was going through the lunch line and there was a big bowl of apples and it said, 'You're on the honor system, take one, remember God is watching.'" So he goes further down the aisle, takes one, and sees a big bowl of cookies and leaves a note himself and says, "Take all you want, God's busy watching the apples." That concludes my report. Very good. A joke. A funny joke. All right. That being said, fellow Rotarians, it is a pleasure to call up President-elect Tim Johnson, who will introduce today's speaker.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nat Glover, who made history back in 1995 when he was elected the first African-American sheriff in the state of Florida after serving on the police force since 1966. Nat served 2 terms, followed by his role as the 29th president of Edward Waters College, his alma mater and Florida's oldest private institution of higher learning. Now, during Nat's law enforcement career, he worked tirelessly for equity in the justice system, and he helped to create a safer city for our youngest citizens. He's also a devoted mentor, coach, role model, who's provided valuable service on numerous civic and nonprofit boards. In his first term as sheriff, Nat donated $240,000 of his personal pension benefits to a college scholarship fund for low-income children in Jacksonville. He also participated in the White House Leadership Conference on youth drug use and violence. Nat's commitment to youth and education has continued throughout his career. He's a board member and he's helped develop the New Town Success Zone. It's an initiative that provides a place-based continuum of service for residents in one of Jacksonville's most challenged urban poor communities. Garnering partnerships from throughout the community, the Success Zone provides everything from prenatal to well baby care to college and post-secondary training for children and their families living in Newtown, a neighborhood adjacent to EWU. It is my pleasure, and I hope you'll join me in a enthusiastic West Jax welcome to the man of the hour, Sheriff Nat Glover.
I'll do the advancing for you when it's time.
Good afternoon. I was a little weak, but I'll let you get away with that. Certainly, I'm honored to be here. I've been kind of on a circuit and talking to a great degree about my memoir that recently published. And for years, I have resisted the urging to write my memoir. I had such a life, and people would always say, you need to write about that. And of course, I'm thinking that they're kind of just being kind. But I can tell you, once I start to write about it, I am so glad that I did. And of course, there's some of my life has been the epitome of racism. And I thought that if I was totally open about it, that it would be banned from the schools when you consider the climate now. But I just went ahead and called it like it was. And the Duval County school system approved the book, and it will be in the Duval County school system library. And yeah, thank you, and that deserves applause, because I think when you look at this memoir, I think you'll see what they saw, and that it is inspiring, motivating, and encouraging to young people, sending the message clearly. It's not where you came from, it's where you're going. Also talks a lot about perseverance. But here's a big piece of what it talks about. It talks about all of the things that happened to me that one could characterize as catastrophes. Somehow, it turned out to be positive in the long run. To give you an example, when I was in the first grade, I got retained. I mean, who gets retained in the first grade? And I probably could have lived with being retained, but when people used to come to the house and my parents used to introduce the kids, and when They say, and that's Nathaniel there. They would say, oh, is that the one that got put back? Now, put back is a more traumatic term. And I couldn't handle that. That was awful. But what it did, it instilled in me that I will never get put back again. I will never do things at a level where there would be a question about it. So it taught me to do things at a level that it would be noticeable as top of the line. And that helped me big time throughout my life. As you all know, I got caught downtown. And the reason I say you might know I got caught downtown doing Axtown Sabbath. And I was attacked by a mob of Klansmen, Ku Klux Klansmen, and white supremacists. And of course, they were hitting me with the axe handles. And it was one of the most traumatic times in my life because I thought they were going to kill me. And I ran to a police officer, and that police officer said, you better get out of here before they kill you. And I ran home. And I ran because I was afraid. I was terrified. And when I got home, I cried. And I couldn't stop crying. Not because of pain, but because I ran. Because at that time in my neighborhood, you didn't run away from a fight. If you ran away from a fight, they will call you a coward. And you would have to live with that the rest of your life. And that's why I was crying. I was so embarrassed. But at the end of the day, at the end of that crying episode, I said to myself, and this has stuck with me to this day as I talk to you about it. I said to myself, I will never run away from another fight. I will never not do something I should do because I'm afraid, or do something I shouldn't do because I'm afraid. And in a strange way, that mentality paved the way because of actions I took as a police officer for quite a bit of recognition and distinction in the sheriff's office, which caused people to look at me in a whole different way. So I wanted to write about it. And once I started writing, I am a little sorry that I didn't start writing earlier. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Now, also in the book, I talk about criminal justice and where we are as it relates to criminal justice. And the lack of, I'm going to just be honest with you and say, to a degree that concerns me, a lack of trust of the police in so many different venues. And we got to get back to this whole notion of trusting the police. And I'm talking not just the police, I'm talking the criminal justice system as a whole. And we talk about the criminal justice system, we talk about the police, we talk about the prosecutors, we talk about the judges, and of course, the correctional system. And to a great degree, when it comes to those areas, minorities represent a disproportionate number of people that's being arrested, prosecuted, they're getting more time, and incarcerated. You just can take the situation here in Florida. African Americans make up less than 20% of the population. But they also represent more than 40% of those incarcerated. There's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. And I don't believe it's all racism. I believe some of it has to do with implicit bias. And that is people who can't relate to the people that they have to end up arresting, end up prosecuting, and end up sentencing to terms in prison. We're gonna have to fix that. We're gonna have to fix that. And when you talk about abuse, that's another area we're gonna have to fix. Because too often, when there are allegations about police officers misconduct, it's a black-white thing. And since I've been in law enforcement for so long, it had distinguished myself as a professional law enforcement officer, police officer of the year, Florida Law Enforcement Hall of Fame. I thought I should write about it. And after having done so, I really feel good about it. So, I'm sorry. Can you see that? Okay. Striving for justice. A black sheriff in the Deep South. I guess I could omitted the black sheriff in the Deep South. Y'all do realize it's black, right? Y'all kind of figured that out, right? But I thought it was important because it was the basis for a whole lot of my challenges. When I was elected chair, I had very little support from the white officers, but I had to win them over. And if I wanted to be able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, I didn't need to bring over kicking and screaming. I needed to win them over. And we were able to do that. For the 8 years I was in office, we reduced crime in Jacksonville, Florida, 17.1%. And that's a big deal. So, striving for justice. And the reason I wanted to talk about striving for justice, I wanted to be in that mix of decisions being made about the criminal justice system. And as a detective, you know, I was able to do some of that when I investigated a case. If the person deserved to go to jail, went to jail. But if there was some opportunity to give a person a break, color notwithstanding, I gave him a break. Why? Because I was arrested. I was arrested for having 2 napkins in my pocket that I had in my pocket because I worked at a cafeteria and I used it for handkerchief. Police officer stopped me, searched me, and put me in jail. Petty larceny for 2 napkins. Now, I wanted to be a police officer. To get arrested, that's a deal breaker. Not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So it turned out to be one of the worst days of my life. But in that time too, they didn't want to hire that many black men at all. So I had 2 strikes again. But when the mayor found out that I couldn't take the police test because I was arrested with 2 napkins in my pocket, the mayor of the city of Jacksonville, Lou Ritter, went down to the Civil Service Administration building and said, I want Nathaniel Glover to take the test to become a police officer. And the administrator said, they don't have to. You've been arrested, you've been in jail, and we don't hire people who've been arrested. And oh, by the way, Mr. Mayor, I don't work for you. I work for that 5-member civil service board. And he said, I know who you work for, but I'll appoint that board. And I'll be reappointing some of them. I want Nathaniel Glover to take the test. Took the test and became a historical sheriff in the state of Florida. There had not been an African-American sheriff elected in the state of Florida since 1888. Now, if I hadn't been arrested, the sheriff would have never known about my case. And I wouldn't be standing here. So something else unfortunate happened to me. Turned out to be good. Next slide. Now that could have been my mugshot, but if you can see that house there, that's a shotgun house. That's the house I grew up in. That's the house where I came from. And standing before now, this distinguished group of Rotarians. That's a big deal, isn't it? Okay, I'm gonna ask that question again. Yeah. That's a big deal, isn't it? Okay, all right. I was trying to highlight you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, distinguished. All right, next slide. That's my mother and my father. A lady who emphasized work and work habits. And I often say, in addition to being my mother, she saved my life. Because I wanted to quit school when I was a young man. I was in a neighborhood where wasn't that many kids going to school. I was one of those going to school, and the others just hanging out, laughing when I walked by on my way to school. 3 guys I used to hang out with One had a car, the other always had a pocket full of money, and the other had a girlfriend. I didn't have none of that. And I was going to school. So I went to my mother and I said, Mom, these Marvin, Barbara, and Charles, they're not going to school. And see, they're doing real good. So here's what I want to say. He said, let me help you with that. If you're going to stay in this house, you're going to school. See, I didn't have no alternative to living anywhere else. So I went to school. And to this day, I'm convinced, had I not gone to school, I would have either ended up in the prison system or the cemetery. But it was that lady that looked me in the eye and said, you're going to school. I didn't think she was the coolest mom at that time, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. You can see it, I've already told you about Axe Hammer Saturday. And I always thought, because every time I told that story, people will say how awful that police officer was that did not help me when I ran to him for help. And he did not help me. But I believe to this day, with all my heart, that if he had not been standing there watching them as they were hitting me, they would have killed me. I would have been lynched that day. So maybe he didn't do all he could do. And maybe he was sympathetic to them. But I believe, I like to look at it in a positive way. I believe he saved my life. As you can see, I ended up going to school, graduating, eventually going to college, and was captain of the football team for 2 years. Now, strangely, I told you my mother made me go to school, didn't want to be there. I was going 1 minute before the bell rang to go in school, and 2 minutes after that bell rang, I was on my way home. But here's what happened. I was in my 11th grade year. 1 more year to go. And my brother, who was 5 years ahead of me in that same school, he was a stellar athlete. I'm talking, they used to call him all world. And boy, I was getting his accolade. But they would say, that's Nat Glover there. That's Eugene Glover, brother. Pick my chest out and walk down the hall with an expanded chest, getting big time love. I got to the 11th grade. 2 months before the end of my 11th grade year, they stopped saying, that's Nathaniel Glover. That's Eugene Glover, brother. They didn't stop saying it. They said it, but they added something on it. They said, that's Nathaniel Glover. That's Eugene Glover, brother. But he saw it. Now, you can't get called sorry and go to school every day. Went to the coach, begged him to play football, played 1 year of football, and was the outstanding offensive lineman. Got a full scholarship to go to college. Another divine intervention. And I can tell you to this day, I was not interested and playing any sport. And believe me, that's what allowed me to get elected sheriff. Because everywhere I went, I talked about my master's degree. You're gonna have a sheriff with a master's degree. That distinguished me against my opponents. And I got elected. As you can see, do any of you all remember that Sheriff Jim McMillan said that he wasn't certain that Jacksonville had progressed to a point where would elect a black sheriff? Any of you all remember that? Okay, so you remember that. I call that, when I was running for sheriff, I call that my burning bush. Because I think when he said that, that was another divine intervention. Because when he said that, I think he called Jacksonville out. Called Jacksonville out, and I got elected sheriff in the first primary. The first primary. Now, Jim McMillan was the epitome when it came to fairness. But what he said was what everybody else was wondering if Jacksonville had progressed to the point where it would elect a black sheriff. And they proved they were ready. Got elected in the first primary, 55% of the vote. And they call that a landslide. I often kid about it. I didn't know what that other 45% was thinking. But what I did, I took this whole notion of community policing to a whole nother level. And I wanted to write about it because I think that when they started that community policing initiative, you had a lot of police officers and police departments that was doing it half-heartedly so they can get the money that was appropriated for it. But I took it to a whole nother level. You all remember, some of you, I walked through the neighborhood. I put police officers' names on their car. When I walked through those neighborhoods, in some instances, it was a lot of trash in the neighborhood and there was no pride in that neighborhood because it was so much rubbish. I would come back the next day with some of my inmates out of jail and we will clean it up. Then call those people together and say, now, if we have a crime in this neighborhood, we want you to help us with it. Gave them pride and it helped us reduce crime. I can tell you too, when I went to my first Florida Sheriff's Association meeting, I was on my way to the meeting and I told the lady at the desk, she was checking us in, and I told her I don't want to be late, but I'm waiting on a phone call. So they might call you, but you can come in and get me out of the meeting and I'll come out and answer the phone. And she said, yes, sir, yes, sir. And you see our number? I said, yes, sir. She said, okay. And when will you be sitting so I can find you? I said, ma'am, you come in there. You won't have a problem finding me. Now, true story. And I can tell you, I was, to a great degree, rejected by a lot of the sheriffs. I mean, it was traumatic for them too. You know, I still don't hold any grudges about it. But some of them, a few of them, made me feel welcome. Most of them, if they spoke to me, they walked past me real fast and almost hid when they spoke to me. But it was all right because I had to win their respect. And I know I had to win their respect. And I was able to do that eventually. I was able to do that eventually, and I'll show you how. Next slide. That other, the one on the left there is the governor. That's the vice president there in the middle. And that's the president and the attorney general on the right. They all came to Jacksonville to walk through a neighborhood with Nat Glover. Because I epitomize what community policing was all about. And when I went to my next Florida Sheriff's Association meeting, they were all crowded around me asking, how did you do that? How did you do it? And the memoir talks about being the best that you can be. Whatever you do, find a way to distinguish yourself amongst your people. I tell young people, it's okay to be okay. And it's good to be good. But strive to be the best. Somebody's gonna get that designation of being one of the best. And that's what I see. And that's the reason I think the book wasn't finally adopted by the school system. Thank you. And Tim, when he introduced me, he didn't say I was a former mayor, did he? Y'all remember about it? He didn't? So you can see I ran for mayor, right? What do you think happened? Okay, let me put this together. When he introduced me, he didn't say that I was the former mayor. And you could see the energy, me running for mayor. So what do you think happened in the election? Who said it? Say it again. Yeah, that's right. I lost. I didn't think it was that many of you all missed that. I mean, I'm okay with it. I lost. I always tell Doug, we in the same association, running for mayor and lost. I kind of embraced that. And the reason I embrace it is because I'm convinced it was divine because I needed to go to Edward Waters College. And it was on the margins. It was about to collapse. And if I had been mayor, I wouldn't have been able to go. So I make the case that the Lord allowed me to be sheriff so I can use that reputation and trust to go to the public and say, help me save this town. And we were able to turn it around. Again, divine intervention. And of course, Tim talked about me donating my pension for 4 years to a college scholarship fund. I always felt like I got a break. I got the break that allowed me to go to college free. Come from where I came and was able to go to college. Shame on me if I didn't help somebody else. And I was able to pay for the education of 30 young men and women, full scholarship to state universities. And if I'm coming to speak to the Rotary Club, you do know, can y'all read that second line? All right. You don't want them to brag. And of course, that's the governor also awarding me the Great Floridian. And I certainly appreciate that. And that's another distinction I will always cherish. And of course, that's my family and my pastor at the good.
You gotta step up. There you go.
Florida Sheriff's Association Hall of Fame. And one of those situations that find a way to distinguish yourself. Be the best you can be. And of course, that's Donna Deacon there. It's on her transition team. And I was certainly honored to be on that transition team. But if you all remember, I ran that ad during the campaign about Jacksonville going back. And that was one of those situations. I felt like I had to do that because the tone of the campaign was taking us back to us and them. And we in Jacksonville, we paid that price. We paid that price big time. And I have paid personally, because when I ran for mayor, I woke up one morning and they had on my campaign headquarters, no NIGPER mayor. Any of you all remember that? So I had to stand up. And again, that's another picture of Jacksonville University naming their public policy program after me. And now the minority masters in public policy, when they graduate, they will be Glover Fellow. Yeah, I think that's good. Thank you. I think that's it. So I'll stop in time.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. Okay. Gigi.
It sounded in high school when you went to the coach to play football, being part of that team, something changed. In that moment, something changed for you. What was that? What was being part of something bigger than yourself in high school? How did that make a difference?
Well, it made a huge difference. Again, it was just the environment that I was living in. And if you got the title of being sorry, which meant that you could play sports, you were in F and all of those things, it was just something that would have been difficult to live with. But you see, I think that was divine in that particular instance, because there's no way I would have played sports, because you have to stay after school to practice. And that wasn't gonna happen. But I had to do it, and that's what it took. And to this day, I think that was the only thing that would have made me do that. Of course, I did play, I'm Eugene Glover's brother card. That was probably low, but I went ahead and played that card too. And the coach allowed me to play.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Sheriff Weber. That was outstanding. You know, it's a stark reminder of where we started, how far we've come, and in some respects, how far we still have to go. So that was outstanding. Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick reminders. Next week, there's going to be no lunch meeting, and on March 6th, the week after, there will be no lunch meeting. Next week, we're going to have our social here in 10 o'clock from 5:30 to 7:30. Whereas the week after, on Tuesday, March 5th, the social will be at the Jacksonville Children's Course meeting. It's going to be catered by the Scotties, the Troop One. So hopefully everybody can make it. There's going to be a board meeting starting in about 5 minutes or so. And it's a pleasure to ask past President Kathy Cole to lead us in the board.
Can I say one more thing before we stand?
Yes, sir.
The proceeds from the book will go to fund scholarships for poor kids. So it's not, yeah. Just want to let you know that.
Sir. Goodwill and better friendships. All concerned.
Thank you very much, fellow Rotarians. Let's go make the world a better place. Great.